Well, hello everybody. I'm here at the Cathedral Archives in Exeter. The wonderful place. We're actually inside the Bishop's Palace. Right behind me is the cathedral, most of it built in the early 1300s, the early 14th century. A lot of it at the end of the 1200s as well, and the church goes all the way back to Roman times as its foundation. So huge history in this place. This is my home away from home, actually. So I wanted to do a video in here and introduce you. Welcome to my little place here where I do a lot of my work for my PhD. So I look at documents, and I look at 14th century mainly documents. This in front of me here is a medicine book, which is a contemporary of what I look at, and I'll show you it in a second. So I'm looking at these documents, looking at, particularly I'm looking at medieval paper. So I'm seeing when this in front of me, this book here, is actually written on parchment, on animal skin. So all these pages here are actually animal skin. And the process was amazing, and this is what was used throughout the Middle Ages. And then all of a sudden there was a shift between using parchment and starting to use paper. And for a long time it's been kind of looked at that with the printing press and the beginning of printed books, that is when this transition changes. But what I'm looking at is a different process. Now, why am I telling you this in your class? Well, for world history is largely about exchanges of ideas. It's largely the development of what is called world systems of exchange, which is the exchange of three things really: goods, people, and ideas, right? And also disease. So goods and ideas, people, disease, those things are all being exchanged at different levels throughout world history. So even at the very beginning, when we're looking at Paleolithic society, you'll see that how those sort of things start to change and start to explore things differently, where people becoming hunters and gatherers start to domesticate both plants and animals and start to be put, and then they start to exchange things, and that communication starts to grow. Throughout our class, you're going to see how that transition changes and expires into something else. What's called the Silk Road across Eurasia. And then with Columbus, as you see, we'll talk about with Columbian exchange, the interaction between what's called the New World, Western Hemisphere, and Europe and the rest of the world starts to create something new and different as well. That's the world system of exchange changing again. The very thing I look at here in these archives are how that process played out in the Middle Ages. So this is 14th century paper. And where was paper invented? Well, it was invented in the 2nd century in China. And there was a process where paper started to move west. And then with the Islamic Empire growing in the 8th century, they found paper battling against these Chinese empire, and they brought it and used it throughout the Mediterranean in their world. And then from there, that exchange eventually started to diffuse into Europe, where it eventually came here in England and started to be used as a medium for writing. So that is an example of what's going on, where material culture starts in one place and starts to change. Same with other ideas, same with religion, same with the practices of doing things, same with language. All of these processes don't happen in a vacuum. And there's a way and an exchange that happens. And that's one large sort of theme that we're going to be looking at throughout world history, of how interaction between peoples, communication links, trade networks, even horrible things like disease can devastate people because of this interaction. But also technology, which allows for so much interaction to occur. Oftentimes you hear the word globalization. Well, that has been a process from day one, and working in how to exchange ideas. In the 20th century, we just exploded that whole thing with internet and electronic technology, and fast-moving transportation. But that's a process in another stage of what's been happening. So I just wanted to explain that and show you what I do a little bit here, and how that does in fact tie into our world history class. So think of other ways how world systems of exchange. the interaction between goods, people, ideas, disease, have created things for better or worse throughout history and today. So think of that, and not only in this class, but your other classes as well. A lot of you are in my U.S. history class. That's a process playing out throughout that class as well. So just something to think about as we carry on with our look into world history and how that interaction creates a whole new system of exchange between goods, ideas, people, and of course disease.